I have to be honest and say that I wasn't really sold on the idea and gameplay that was real for Doom the Dark Ages. After playing the game for over 20 hours at the time of this review and getting the Platinum Trophy for this game, I have to say, it has kind of grown on me despite its many flaws and design choices. Considering Doom 2016 and Eternal, this might be the most straightforward entry in the series. I think Bethesda and its software just released this game banking on the legacy of the franchise to sell it, and as I mentioned before, some of the overall choices made in the development just doesn't make it feel like a Doom game. It feels more like someone had sat down and played Warhammer Boltgun to get the core feel of the game, and that it is not the only similarity that the Dark Ages shares with Boltgun. But I'm getting ahead of myself. There are a lot of problems to address, from the music, story, audio mixing issues, and the core combat loop. For example, the music plays is sometimes non-existent, and the excessive amount of cutscenes when previous games in the series made fun of the story of Doom and conveyed the weight or importance of what was happening on screen.
I'm willing to take full responsibility for the horrible events of the last 24 hours, but you must understand. Our interest in their world was purely for the betterment of mankind. Everything has clearly gotten out of hand now, yes. But it was worth the risk, I assure you.
But as always, let's just start with gameplay first. I want to make it known before I start talking about the gameplay, I didn't use any of the Modifiers AKA Journo mode, which is just available from the start with any difficulty, even Ultra Nightmare, which is the permadeath mode, but you can bypass all of that difficulty this mode offers by using these modifiers. Things like parry window, damage to the player, damage to the demons, enemy aggression, game speed, enemy daze, and even projectile speed can be changed. All these things can be tweaked by the player to make the game brain dead easy, even on the highest difficulty, but most people are going to make the argument that you can use these modifiers to make it game completely skewed to the other end of being unbalanced. It's on the devs themselves to give the players a universal experience across the board, not give the players a handicap who won't even engage with the intended way to play the game, or even get good, like a kid said. If the modifiers were tied to collectibles, you could use them after finishing the game on a hard difficulty or make them only available as a separate mode. I would have no problem with them. So all of my criticism and experience is from the default settings made available from the start by the devs, and I'm not going to change my opinion on it. Moving on. Like I mentioned before, the core gameplay and how even Doomguy controls have been taken from Warhammer Boltgun. The footstep noises he makes when he walks, runs, or lands after a huge jump are exactly how it is and feels in that game. This is not the only design choice they seem to have followed for this entry. Gone are the side and back dashes. The strafing sideways to dodge projectiles is so slow now that the new gimmick of the game is the shield, which comes to the tagline of the game. Hugo Martin himself said, "Stand and fight," where the game becomes more brain dead easy when you abuse the shield on most difficult. But that is not to say even a fodder enemy can kill you in 2 to 3 hits if it gets behind. And some attacks you can even see coming will kill you in an instant if you're not parrying 360 degrees every other second. Instead of stand and fight, the main tagline should have been forward momentum, but that doesn't sound as fun. This is where most people are going to start getting frustrated, as if you're only watching someone play the game, it'll get boring immediately. But when playing it yourself, the moment-to-moment gameplay will keep you engaged if you're not playing it like Doom Eternal. I want to go in depth on the shield because, like I said, it's the new gimmick for this entry, and just like the meat hook was for Doom Eternal, the shield has 4 main types of uses: throw, shield bash, parry, and block. The way you stay alive is you have to parry 2 types of Hell Surge attacks, melee and projectiles, which are color-coded to be green to let the player know that these are the only attacks that can be parried. The shield bash is the substitute for the meat hook this time around for you to keep the momentum going, somewhat close to Eternal, but once you make contact with an enemy, you lose all speed and have to start moving forward again to gain back the momentum you lost. You will find yourself dying often due to enemy projectile. Throwing the shield is also another important skill you have to learn and have to know when to throw it, especially in order to get the full use out of it. If an enemy has armor or a shield, you have to first superheat the metal until it starts glowing, then throw your shield to pop it like a piñata to get armor shards, like the Flame Belch did in Eternal. And if you throw it at enemies without armor, it stuns them in place for you to shred them with your weapons, but this doesn't work on champion demons like the Agadon Hunter, Vagray, the Komodo, and the Cosmic Baron. So you should just parry against these types of enemies instead of throwing your shield at them and having it coming back to you. Time also slows down for a few seconds if you hold down the throw button instead of pressing it, and this is available from the start, and the game doesn't tell you this, so this might be something to keep in mind when moving around the arena trying to be precise when throwing the shield
on specific demons. Also, the shield has a bar which depletes if you just keep blocking every attack without parrying, and you are left defenseless. You are forced to use the shield as some of the projectiles track you, so it's best to parry them whenever possible. The game doesn't tell you when you do use your shield bash to reach an enemy, all enemy projectiles are negated if they are in front of you, so it's best to know about this. I think the shield would be a better mechanic if you could parry almost anything, but with no indicators and a small window to do it. This would ask for a different approach for the player to learn, but this is also a temporary fix until devs can fully realize and have to make the shield more fun with shooting guns. Now to the most important part of Doom, the weapons. And I have to say, they are somewhat underwhelming given the setting for the game. If I gotta sum it up, let's just say the default 3 basic guns you get at the start are enough to carry you through the entire game. Like the default shotgun, once fully upgraded, sets your enemies on fire and gives you armor shard. The shredder, like its namesake, is in tandem with the shield, can either be used to detonate the pins shot at them or throw your shield at a big demon to ricochet your rounds at nearby enemies. But some guns just work by themselves, like the plasma gun, which is like a click and hold to delete everything in front of you, and can be used to detonate the plasma shields for maximum effect. It has no utilities with the shield, but you can also throw your shield at plasma demons to ricochet off the enemies nearby. And depending on the number of demons around, you can clear a pretty good chunk of fodder enemies without even looking. More weapons get their own benefits from using the parry to empower them, like the chain shot, which bypasses the charge up time if you just parry hell surge attacks, and the rocket launcher, which heals you for splash damage instead of hurting you if you parry the incoming attacks. On that point, gone are weapon mods, and instead you get a new weapon in the same ammo category except the chain shot, but sometimes I feel like some weapons do the same thing during frantic gameplay, and that's where the mundanity of the gameplay loop comes from. Maybe this will be fixed in the DLC. And I almost forgot to mention the the BFC, big fucking crossbow, because that's how unmemorable it is in the game. The BFC isn't as spectacular as it used to be in the previous games, and it looks and plays too basic, but the concept arts for the BFGs look more interesting than the end result. The final 2 things to mention are the melee weapons and the shield runes. Melee weapons are what replace the chainsaw and the crucible. You start with the pyro gauntlet, which is the weakest with 3 charges. The flail also comes with 3 charges but does medium damage with more health and armor drops. And finally, the dread mace deletes almost every demon in one hit and gives the max ammo, health, and armor shards. But the catch is, it has only 1 charge but can be upgraded so that if you parry an attack, you get 1 free charge again immediately. The final thing to mention is the shield runes, which are given out periodically as you progress throughout the game. And these are passive skills that can be activated every time you parry a projectile health surge and not a melee health surge. There are 4 runes: Ground Fissure, which creates a shockwave on the floor in a conical radius which stuns enemies for a second; the Ethereal Swords that home in on demons and impale them to drain their health; Lightning, which just bounces from one enemy to the other with high damage; and finally, the best one, the Shoulder-Mounted Auto Turret, which automatically locks onto whatever enemy you are aiming at and just shreds them down to their bones and has the shortest recharge time out of all the runes present. These features and mechanics make up the moment-to-moment gameplay loop, and in my opinion, they are still really underwhelming once you're halfway into the game, as you have learned everything the game has to offer, and the only thing driving you at that point is get to the end on autopilot. I don't hate it either, but I just feel like it needs something more for this game to truly stand out in its own identity from the hundreds of boomer shooters based on Doom that are just coming out almost every month now.
There is not much to say about the different types of demons except for the variation of the Pinky Rider and the Agadon Champion. Most of these enemies function the same way as in previous Doom games, with an added mechanic of parrying every attack they do and shooting when they are stunned for max efficiency. The game introduces a leader demon which has a shield around it until you lower the morale in the encounter by killing all the other big name demons in the arena to even start damaging the leader. This gets annoying really quickly, as if whatever demon is within the shield can also still attack you while being invincible, and if it's a cyber demon, it'll just keep spawning ground spikes even if you're farther away in the arena. So this type of encounters are the most annoying. A way to fix this would be, give the leader demon more health and make it spawn harder demons in the arena until you can kill it, but this still may be just a band-aid fix given the core gameplay loop. Also, the boss fights suck really bad in this game, introducing new enemy types and mini-bosses, and they become standard enemies in the future encounters. The 2 unique boss fights that are present, the Creed Maker and the Prince Azrak fights, are broken down to a disappointing bullet hell, strafe runs, or Sekiro like parry fist. I was kinda disappointed at these boss fights as they were simply tedious rather than difficult. At one point I was just focused on the green glow and rather than the actual enemies or bosses themselves. It just devolves into a brain dead clicking simulator rather than acting. You are simply reacting to enemies, further emphasizing the parrying aspects of the game. Maybe when they release the DLC for Doom the Dark Ages, I do hope they actually listen to these criticisms and add more unique demons, encounters, and bosses that fix a lot of the problems in the base game. There are a lot of good ideas, but they fall flat during gameplay. The new sections added to this game are the mech fights and the dragon riding levels, which are supposed to replace the map editor and multiplayer. Personally, after hearing a lot of people complain about the mech levels not doing anything really interesting, I found them to be fun and short. They're only 10 minutes long and don't overstay their welcome, although I do want different enemies and mechanics to justify their existence. The only thing you'll be doing in the mech is just dodging left and right to empower your melee attacks to kill the titans, but later levels you get a chain gun and a shotgun, which is the most fun one to use in these sections. I also want to mention that Hugo Martin, the game director, worked on the Pacific Rim movies, and it shows. This is all I had playing in my head when I was in the mech. My feelings on the dragon riding section are mixed. It is a cool and interesting concept, but it's very bare bones in the sense that all you do is fly around the levels and lock yourself in shooting sections where you do dodge the incoming attacks to empower your guns to destroy the shields on the demons. And this was almost in every encounter involving Sarat. The only way to make the mech and dragon sections better is to add more unique enemies or more combat mechanics to actually keep the player engaged. Like I said before, the funding for the multiplayer and map editor was cut and these levels were replaced. Hopefully when they do release DLC, these sections get more fleshed out. However, I'm not too confident about the dragon levels coming back, as it is a spoiler, and I'll cover that in the story section. And speaking of story, it is the least important part of a Doom game. Let me put it like this. When the Doom guy who doesn't even speak is more interesting to watch than most of the other characters in the story who are constantly exposition dumping to pad out the runtime, it starts to get annoying halfway through the game. But in spirit of being fair to the game, I will give it a rundown of what happened. Since this is a prequel to Doom 2016, we get to know what Doom Guy was doing between the original Doom games and 2016. And we get to see the Knight Sentinel from the previous games under siege from a demonic horde led by Prince Azrak, the main villain of this game, who looks like a discount ripoff of Vlad Tepes from Bram Stoker's Dracula with the armor, and some of the concept art made him look like a Pinhead straight out of Hellraiser. Guess concept artists are running out of ideas at this point. Moving on, we get to King Novik and a new character, Commander Thera, our DEI gold boss for this game. She's voiced by our Black Queen, Deborah Bug-Eye Wilson, and I have to mention that Thera is white, who is voiced by a black woman. An initial concept art for the game suggests that somewhere along the way they made the final change to make her look more ugly instead of young feminine look we can see here. And people can cope and say she looks good, but I recognize a man chin right away when I see one. At least she isn't modeled after Deborah Wilson herself, where every modern game for some reason puts her in, in everything right now, and it's not her voice acting skills, by the way. And while I'm on the topic of VAs, Doom Guy is voiced by a black dude for the one line he says in the game, when previously he was voiced by a white dude in Doom Eternal. I'm just saying, some shenanigans are going on with the VA union in the video game industry. Moving on with the story, we get to see Doom Guy under control by the Makers being used as a weapon to kill, but that lasts for about one mission before Doom Guy frees himself from the control of the Makers by being just too angry. More shenanigans happen with the demons for the next few levels as they are searching for something called the Heart of the Argent, which is the MacGuffin that Prince Dracula needs to get a power boost so that he can transition into an all-powerful god. Then he can kill all the Knight Sentinels. But here's the kicker. The artifact we do find is not the real Heart of the Argent. Our resident girl boss Commander Thera is the living embodiment of a sentient wraith god or whatever, and she becomes the driving plot of the game. This takes us on a quest to save her after she is kidnapped by tentacles from another dimension called the Cosmic Realm. This is what I mean when I said this feels more like Warhammer 40k than a Doom game with all these alternate dimension and cosmic entities and shit. The god living within Thera is from here, so we fight through Cthulhu to save her. She's so powerful that even Doomguy can't touch her because she's such a girl boss. We get captured and decide our own tether character that the makers fuse to our armor to keep us on a leash, but in the process die and get to a different version of hell. Where the devs literally do a too angry to die meme by making Doom Guy a zombie. Fight our way out by ramming a ferry into the gates of hell. While all of this is happening, the Night Sentinels perform a demonic ritual to bring Doomguy back in the same sarcophagus that he was entombed in the start of Doom 2016 and the end of Doom Eternal.
The damned.
Makers are still not responding. Defenses about to be breached.
I'm going back.
We then have a big final battle with Cthulhu and Prince Ak, which I stated in the boss fight section is just a parry fest. We ripped the Heart of the Argent out of him and put it back into Thera, who is now a super-powered living weapon just like Doomguy. But while all this is happening, Prince Asswipe gets away and we go into a final battle with the girl boss and the Diversity Squad with us. Again, this scene shows how powerful Thera is by killing multiple demons with ease. If you guys take a look at this character action sheet, this is not standard storyboarding slides. Instead, this suggests to me that she was a playable character at some point in the game, but was taken out during the final development phase. Maybe they will make her playable in the DLC. Who knows? After we find Prince Asshat for the final time, Doomguy smashes his head with a mace, which is pretty cool, not gonna lie. and the demon horde seeing this runs away. Finally, after all this, we get another girl boss speech from Tiara about nothing, but we get to see Doom Guy in hell with the Maker ship getting ready to start his never-ending crusade against the demons, and the game just ends there, which is a really weird way to end it. One reason is that they have to sell you a campaign DLC like they did with Doom Eternal, but again, man, Doom Guy is more interesting to watch and play just by his sheer presence alone, and everything else in the story feels like padding or a waste of time to justify this thing existing. I didn't care for the story at all, and then I took a look at the official concept art for the game, and I could see the devs were really having fun conceptualizing Doom in different genres within the media. One of them is in a space opera like Flash Gordon, and the other is all the way to sci-fi like heavy metal. All these concepts look more interesting that was given to us in the end. If they just took a risk and made this into a Far Cry Blood Dragon sort of spin-off instead of trying to pigeonhole the series into something that it's not. But hey, this is just my opinion and it doesn't matter, so moving on. So we get to talk about the music quickly. As since the Doom 2016 reboot, one thing the series is known for is the music. I still remember listening to Rip and Tear to this day, and that is all thanks to one guy, and that is Mick Gordon. But unfortunately, Mick didn't work on these music for this game due to like personal conflicts with id Software. The task of making the music this time went to a company called Finishing Move Inc. They worked on games like Borderlands 3, Callisto Protocol, and the Halo 2 Anniversary Edition. And I gotta say, the music this time around is a huge letdown, as neither it is unique or even audible at certain points in the game. id Software really dropped the ball on this one, because this is what happens when you give the job to someone who fundamentally doesn't understand the core themes or elements of the franchise they are making the music for. But I have no more thoughts about this, so let's quickly talk about the art direction and UI for the game. Honestly, the whole game is easier on the eyes and pleasant to look at, more than Eternal ever was. Also, a fun fact for you, the UI in the middle is to indicate the Doom Guy looking around and reacting to being hurt. Is a good callback to the old Doom games, I guess. And you can also change it in the menu to show the pixel sprite Doom Guy in the level where Doom Guy dies and becomes a zombie, like I talked about in the story section. The icon changes to a zombie Doom Guy. Yeah, at least they tried to appeal to nostalgia, right? The game is also well optimized and ran fine on the PlayStation, and after talking to a couple of people who played it on PC, it runs smoothly, and people only encountered a few bugs which were not game breaking, although one bug became annoying where after every chapter when you press continue to progress to the next level, it just takes you back to the main menu, which starts to get annoying real fast. This is all thanks to the id Tech 8 engine, which was purposely made for Doom and Doom only. And I gotta say, the game looks great with higher fidelity graphics and texture quality for all the graphic whores out there. Maybe that is one of the good things to come out of this game is the engine. This takes me to my final point, which is talking about the level design and combat encounters. The level design, some areas are really well done, and gone are the monkey bars and vertical platforms from Eternal. It's more flat and open spaces for you to run around in while using the shield to zoom around from enemy to enemy. There are semi-open-ended levels where you can choose what objectives to do first while also looking for collectibles to upgrade your weapons and shield. The only problem with these types of levels is that it gets annoying opening your map every 10 seconds looking for stuff in the environment. Also, it's really hard to miss collectibles in this game. You would have to go out of your way to be able to miss them, as you can get all of them in a single playthrough. Earlier in the video, I said that this felt like a Warhammer game more than a Doom game, and it shows where Lovecraftian and cosmic horrors inspired some of the levels, and it only works for aesthetic reasons. I feel as though they didn't fully lean into making these levels unique apart from a few puzzle rooms and combat encounters, like one where you're in a haunted ship, the other is a spinning puzzle room, or an encounter where you have to get a collectible with the use of your shield. I just wish there were more types of these things to keep it interesting, as I mentioned previously, and that they have given up this being a Doom game. My final thoughts on the game are a little bit of disappointment and frustration, but I also see some potential if they completely lean into doing a spin-off from the main canon, or say this is a gimmick of using the shield and parry as a core part of the gameplay loop be changed or refined so that it is more intuitive to use and doesn't promote brain dead moment-to-moment gameplay. Considering that, I would strongly recommend that you sail the high seas if you want to play this game, or get it at a steep discount of more than half off if you want to own it on your consoles or an official storefront. Like I said, the industry is at a weird place right now, not wanting to take risks or make anything fun. Doom the Dark Ages is not the best game or the worst game released this year, it is just a game that exists. And just like the game, people talking about it are on either extremes and not being honest in order to either shill or grift off the drama surrounding it. Also, I think it's worth mentioning that the player count for Doom the Dark Ages was less than half of that of Eternal,
Eternal, and Microsoft still hasn't even released the sales figures for the game. Only an approximate player count of 3 million. That number comes from the total downloads from the Game Pass users who got the game for dirt cheap and probably will never finish it. Estimate total number of individual units sold on PlayStation, Xbox, and PC combined is said to be less than 1 million units sold. It's safe to say the game failed to meet the sales expectations. It's not really looking good for id Software and the Doom IP right now, and given the game has flopped, we might not see another entry in the franchise anytime in the near future. Hopefully this video gives you an idea on whether or not if you want to check out the game yourself, and I hope it's informative. But if you guys would much rather play something else, I would recommend you guys to check out Turbo Overkill, a bloody sci-fi FPS which plays more like the fast-paced gameplay of Doom Eternal, or Sprawl, a Ghost in the Shell inspired FPS with parkour and bullet time to keep the style going. Also, one of the main topics of this video is Warhammer Boltgun, which, like I mentioned before, a lot of gameplay, themes, and stories seem to be taken from these games. And as for the fans of this game, a sequel was just announced this week, so these are all my recommendations instead of Doom the Dark Ages. If you guys agree, disagree, or find anything interesting with what was said in the video, please leave a comment, like, dislike, sub to help out the channel. I would highly appreciate it. With that being said, Doom Eternal sucks.